Oh, hello, fantastic beasts, and welcome to Harry Potter and the Boys, a fan fiction podcast by me, Radio Mike. Tim McDonald, wow, maybe our most high-profile guest so far, joins me on the show. Tim, thank you for being here.
Great to be here, Mike. Call me Camera Tim because my camera's just stopped recording.
Yeah, so obviously, for those not in Melbourne, where both Tim and I reside, over the weekend, we have gone into a snap lockdown. So I never thought we would be recording Harry Potter and the Boys over Zoom. Tim did agree to come to my place, but then because of lockdown, we are now recording over Zoom. I am sure this will be riddled with lots of technical issues. But thank you so much for being so what word am I looking for? So flexible.
Forced. Forced into being here, Mike. That's the word. No, it is great. It's great to be here. The camera's now working, so it's great to be here. Although it does look like I've been taken hostage by ISIS by the background in my wardrobe. But in a way, haven't we all in Melbourne, Mike? Haven't we all?
We all have a little bit. It's like I've put you under the Imperious curse. I've forced you to be here. Do you know the Imperious curse? I guess that's where we start.
What a subtle way to try and find out if I know what I'm talking about. Yes, big Lord of the Rings fan, Mike. So looking forward to talking about Gollum and all of the boys down there. No,
Gollum and Aslan and the White Witch, you know, the Lord of the Rings.
Yep, I feel like we're mixing a few metaphors here. But as long as the Seven Dwarfs are here, Mike, it's going to be great fun. No, I do know Harry Potter. I know what you're talking about, the Imperious Curse, which I do feel like I'm under. Listeners probably feel like it's the Cruciatus Curse, Mike. There's a reference for some of our listeners. Are we still on? Are we still?
Yeah, we are still on. I think the listeners, they don't go into really any of the pleasure spells, but you do assume there's a large magical sexual underworld, don't you? Like there must be, for every Cruciatus, you think there's like an orgasmoosis or something like that kind of spell.
Yeah, that was the only book with the sealed section in it. I don't remember that. I don't remember that book. To be honest, Mike, I haven't read any of the Harry Potter books, so your fan fiction is going to be my first taste of reading the Harry Potter universe.
Okay, so have you seen all of the Harry Potter movies then?
I've seen them. I've seen them about 1,000 times each. Because they're always on like 7 Mate or 7 Flicks or 9 Go, to the point where you can say, is Harry Potter on tonight? And it is. And so I've seen all of them 1,000 times. Everyone always says the third is their favourite. But for me, it's number 2. It's Chamber of Secrets. It's the best character in the franchise, Gilderoy Lockhart, who is I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, although they probably wouldn't be listening to this if they haven't.
The book's been out for over 20 years. The movie's been out for probably 20 by now. I'm sure they've seen it.
Is it too soon? Is it too soon? Anyway, so he's a guy who made up his entire life story and yet becomes a teacher. So the Wizarding Teaching Registry Authority haven't done their due diligence there. And then he blows his brain up and becomes insane, and we never hear from him again.
So interesting you say that, because this is something only book readers will know. Gilderoy Lockhart does reappear in the 5th book.
Does he?
Yeah, so in the 5th book, they go to a place called St. Mungo's Hospital, which is the Wizarding Hospital. Right. And that's where Gilderoy Lockhart has ended up, and they do bump into him there.
Now,
so he does make an appearance in the books again.
At this hospital, Mike, because it appears like in the Harry Potter universe, the only medical remedy is pumpkin juice. So God forbid they get COVID-19 in Hogwarts, because the only... I'm not sure if pumpkin juice has passed phase 2 trials yet, to be honest. But that said, it would be hard to be a Hogwarts student like if COVID came out. Because it's hard to do remote learning when you don't have access to a Norwegian Ridgeback at home. That's going to be hard. And look, is death eating an essential service, Mike? Is it?
Yeah, you really don't know. These questions.
I mean, they're wearing masks. It might as well be. Yeah. On compassionate grounds, you can do death eating.
Yeah, you're allowed to go death eat.
Sorry, Mike. I'm actually writing my own COVID-19 Harry Potter fan fiction. And not to start off your fan fiction podcast by reading someone else's fan fiction, but can I read you the pitch? Here's the pitch.
Please read it. Please read it.
So it's called Harry Potter and the Order of the Chief Health Officer. So it's the follow-up to Harry Potter and the Nebulizer of Fire. So that's going to be great. That's going to be great.
So when can we expect a release date on those?
This is just the pitch. Just
the pitch, yeah.
I need a bit more time. I need to be locked down. I need stage 5 lockdown to have a bit more time to this. What have we got here? They open the Chamber of Quarantine, and that's not good. And it is hard to it is hard to contact trace people who can apparate as a general rule. So Monday they went to Ollivanders. Tuesday they went to Bunnings Hogsmeade. So it's going to be a tough book to write. But anyway, I'm looking forward.
Do they have sausage sizzles at the Bunnings Hogsmeade, or do they do a different wizarding snack? Is it just pumpkin juice out there as well?
No, you get a sausage sizzle and butterbeer, and away you go.
Yeah, nice.
So anyway, that's coming soon. But I'm more looking forward to reading your fan fiction.
Oh well, thank you. I mean, mine's got a little bit of age to it, so mine's there's a bit more time that's been spent mulling over mine. People will know Tim from Have You Been Paying Attention, and of course the Tim and Sammy show. Sam did come on the podcast a few weeks ago, and that's the only one you've listened to, which is perfectly okay. I don't expect any of the guests to ever care about this podcast at all. Well, but you did listen to Sam's episode.
Well, listen is a strong word, but it was on in the it was on in the background. I don't tend to listen to Sam a lot, even when we're doing shows together, but I did hear a bit of it. So I know the basic gist. I love it. I can't keep up with all podcasts in the Radio Mike universe, Mike. There is not enough time in the world. I'd have to be locked down for the rest of my life to be able to catch up with the shows you've released this week. It is great. Sorry, Mike. It is great to be here. I enjoyed the one with Sam, and so the basic premise is you wrote. How old were you when you wrote this book?
Well, so it kind of has two iterations. When I was in grade 4, when I went to primary school, I wrote it at lunchtime outside the canteen with a bunch of other boys in my class. One of whom ended up going to the same school as us, because you and I went to the same school. One of whom went to our school as well, so you may know him. And then in year 7, I rediscovered the exercise book that we had written it in, and I opened it and I was like, oh, I'm going to digitize this. I'm going to type it up. Made a few more mature changes. My writing style developed from the age of 10 to 13, so you've got to expect that there would be some changes happening there in writing style. Authors can't just stay the same.
From children's nonfiction to young adults nonfiction. No, fiction.
Essentially, yes. So I'm about 13. What actually happened in the Sammy Garlep chapter? I believe, was that the sorting hat chapter that he was on, where they were sorting all the different students?
It was. It was called The Sorting Dilemma.
That's right.
The real dilemma was whether to keep reading the book, because it was about 150 people getting sorted in order. And then the main character right at the end, who we just sort of skip over, and we're sorting. Was it Loser McLoserface? Was he one of the characters, or
Idiot Loserface was one of the characters that got sorted in Hufflepuff? Yeah,
Idiot Loserface. Yes, so that's where I left off in the story, but I know that you've had a few more chapters since then. So,
we've been a long way since sorting. Long way.
Oh, great! So they've walked down the corridor. They've opened the door into their rooms. This is the kind of the pace that we're going at.
Yeah, it is a snail pace. Can I ask? I do ask a couple questions before we start. I usually try to predict the house of the guest, and if I'm predicting you, I've known you for some time now. You scream Gryffindor to me. Are you a Gryffindor?
Well played, Mike. 10 points to you. I am a Gryffindor. I haven't done. Someone I know did the Pottermore quiz for me, and I was a Gryffindor. But I'm a Leo in real life, which is the lion. So I am fairly brave. I mean, the bravest thing I've done to date is say yes to this podcast. But that is how brave I am, Mike. But I'm happy to be here. I'm a Gryffindor. What are you? Are you I've known you...
Ravenclaw.
Ravenclaw?
Oh, sorry, I've just ruined it.
I'm going to guess Ravenclaw. Yeah. No.
Yes, I am a Ravenclaw.
Is one of the Ravenclaw traits, it's academically bright.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. The Ravenclaws are the nerdy house, but I like to think that a lot of the Ravenclaws in the movies are quite attractive, and so I like to think that I also fit into that. But that's a subjective thing. The Sorting Hat can't be considering that kind of thing.
What was question 2?
Hey, we do a little segment before we get into the fan fiction, and this segment is called Potter or Notter, which did not feature in Sam's episode. This is a new segment. Let's cue the sting.
Potter or Notter.
So basically, the premise of Potter or Notter, Tim, is I read 3 different lines from different fantasy books. They could be Potter. They could be Notter. You've got to decide whether or not you think the quote that I'm reading comes from Potter or Notter.
Can I just say, Mike, very brave of you to be reading official Harry Potter works on the Harry Potter fan fiction podcast. Very brave to be giving the audience a taste of better writing. I'm not sure I'd be doing
of what
it could be like. I'd be doing this at the end of the podcast. But anyway, ready to guess.
Here's your first one. Is this Potter or is this Notter? The forest was quiet. The slight afternoon breeze stirred the tall oaks and cut the day's heat, while rustling the leaves only slightly. Potter or Notter?
Well, it's definitely not your work because there are adverbs in there. Rustling the leaves slightly. Okay, forest.
The forest was quiet.
The forest was quiet. I mean, it could be the Ivan Milat story, but I'm going to go...
could be the first Del Toro quest, which I believe is called the Forest of Silence. So it could be that.
There will be some silence if some of these jokes don't work well, Mike. I'm going to go Potter. I'm going to go Potter.
Ooh, first person to ever get one incorrect. What? That is Notter. That is from the book Magician by Raymond E. Feist.
Spoiler
which is a
alert,
high
I'm
fantasy novel.
halfway through that. Jeez.
Well, that was in the first chapter. I just opened the book to page 10.
I read books in a different order. I skipped the first.
All right. Here's your second one. This is this Potter or is this Notter? So we need to... This is a quote. 2 characters are talking in this. So we need to choose now who to be friends with for life? That's quite scary. On the contrary, it's exciting. Potter or Notter?
It's shithouse. That's not the game. We need to choose who's to be friends for life. Now, it does sound like the part of the Magician's book that I've read, but it's not that. You wouldn't do that twice in a row. This feels like Dr. Seuss to me, Mike.
Ooh. Is that you locking that in?
Well, judging by your ooh and question, I'm going to go no. I'm going to go this is Harry Potter.
You're correct. That is Potter. Bit controversial. That's from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, the play.
Oh,
so that's whether
I have
a lot of people would consider that Notter and not Potter. So you don't. Yeah.
I have seen that, and I'll be honest. If you thought the child was cursed, try being in the audience. That was a long play, Mike, and it just went everywhere.
Here's our last one before we dive into the fanfic. Right. Is this Potter or is this Notter? All right, this is just a line. This is, just, yeah.
That's right. I know how the segment works. I've been playing it for the last 2 rounds.
Then pain such as he had never experienced sliced through his brain like a demolition ball. Is that Potter or is that Notter?
Pain slicing through a ball, so it's not the Australian cricket team. I know that much. Pain, like he's never experienced slicing through a ball.
Slicing through his brain like a ball.
Oh, slicing through
like a demolition ball.
Like a demolition. Is it the lyrics to Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball, Mike? I don't know. I'm gonna go Notter.
You are correct. That is Notter, but that is from the other book by J.K. Rowling, The Casual Vacancy. So you might have recognized the writing style there.
Of course. I mean, yes. And we all read The Casual Vacancy. I mean, Mike, would you like to tell us for 5 minutes about the plot of The Casual Vacancy?
I'm not up to that one yet. I'm still very much in the Wizarding World era of J.K. Rowling's
writing. You'd be hard pressed to find a person when they say my favourite author is J.K. Rowling. What's your favourite book? Oh, The Casual Vacancy. I love it. Has she written anything else?
Yeah. Haven't heard of her. What else has she done?
But I'm sure all of these books pale in comparison to Harry Potter and the Boys, Mike. Which please tell me it's time to have a read of.
it is time to have a read of, and I've done something because we're not in person. I've actually done something I've never done before, which is distribute this book in some form. I've sent you a PDF.
Wow.
You were the only person in the world to have some kind of not physical, but digital copy of this book. You have just the chapter as a PDF file, which I've emailed to you. Feel free to open that now.
Mike, I feel honoured that you have put your trust in me to have the only additional copy of this work in my possession. However, you obviously don't trust me that much because you've written in bold letters, not for individual resale. So that's right. No trouble here, but I've got the chapter in front of me, Mike. This is amazing. Shall I read the chapter and the title?
Yeah, so we always start with reading out the title of the chapter, and then we go from there. So, Tim, please take away this next chapter, which does have a little bit of an unusual title.
Chapter 13, brackets, and a half. So it's the half chapter already.
J.K. Rowling's famous technique of the half chapters. Chapter 12 and a half, The Boy Who Lived, Part 2.
Chapter 13 and a half, adding a chapter, brackets, or the elemental spells.
Which is this. Now, we're getting into some interesting territory here.
The chapter is called Adding a Chapter, and it is chapter 13 and a half. So you haven't even added a full chapter. So the title is already a lie, Mike.
Yes, it is already a lie. Plus, I wonder if there's a reason why it has to be a half chapter. Like, why can't it just be a full chapter? It is quite long. There's probably 5 or 6 pages, which for this book is long. So we might find out. But let's dive into it.
Chapter 13 and a half, adding a chapter or the elemental spells. The next morning, the boys check their timetable. Good start. Strong start. Hook the reader in, Mike, with some big, bold action. They were going into another lesson of defense against the dark arts with Professor Weasley.
Now, interestingly, and I'm not sure, you probably haven't read far ahead, but sometimes it's defense against the dark arts, and then sometimes it's defense against the dark arts / farts. So it's unclear whether they're a hybrid subject or if they're two different subjects. We don't really know, but it just says defense against the dark arts.
So it's either teaching spells that can be used against dragons or constipation. So good class. Yeah. I'll read on. You're going to think that I'm not reading it, but this is how it's written. Also, did you notice that Hermione is called Professor Granger in this book, not Professor Weasley? Which is pretty wrong, since she married Ron in the epilogue of Book 7. Unless she decided to keep her maiden name, which is perfectly acceptable. And the sentence...
can we just pause there?
Well, the sentence hasn't even finished yet.
Very progressive.
Very progressive, Mike. Very progressive. Even though in the last one I heard there were no female characters. So suddenly by chapter 13, you've developed a conscience, which is great.
Yeah.
So the sentence hasn't even finished yet. I will preface that.
No, so don't take a breath. Do not take a breath. No full stop.
I'm gonna go back to the start, no interruptions, and read this sentence as it was intended.
Yeah.
Also, did you notice that Hermione... Also, did you notice? A narrator saying, did you notice?
This is the narrator being like, oh, what about this? Take a look at this. This is interesting.
Good writing up ahead. Let's take a listen. This is the sentence. Also, did you notice that Hermione is called Professor Granger in this book, not Professor Weasley, which is pretty wrong since she married Ron in the epilogue of Book 7, unless she decided to keep her maiden name, which is perfectly acceptable. But it also adds to speculation that perhaps Ron and Hermione divorced at some point after the 7th book. That was a page.
End of sentence.
That was one sentence per page. This is going to be a long read, Mike. Okay.
But that is very interesting because Professor Granger in this book is Professor Granger. Have Ron and Hermione gotten a divorce by the end of in the 50 years since Deathly Hallows? We don't know. Maybe we find that out later.
It's a bold tactic of the narrator to suggest much more interesting action as a possible subplot to the actual plot, which is the boys check their timetable. So you've speculated on the idea of an interesting marital breakup, but we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to touch on that because the boys have got timetables to check.
You as the listener, you're welcome. You as the reader, you're welcome to think about whether this has happened, but we're not going to be getting into it here. But you are welcome to speculate while still reading the proper.
This is like Bob Catter. Let 1,000 blossoms bloom, but I ain't spending any time on it because the boys have got timetables to check. Okay, let's read on. And this is the narrator. To be honest, I don't think any of us would be upset about that. We all know Hermione is way out of Ron's league, and she could do so much better than him. No offense to Ron or Rupert Grint. I actually really like Rupert Grint.
So this is interesting because the narrator, in this sense, is aware of the fact that Ron is a character that is portrayed by an actor in the real world called Rupert Grint. So this is some real fourth wall breaking because he's acknowledging that the characters in Harry Potter are just characters that are portrayed by actors.
Absolutely. And it's refreshing to read a book where halfway through the author goes, I'm actually a pretty big fan of this character.
You know, I haven't seen Rupert Grint in any other movies except for the Harry Potter movies and do you remember Thunderpants, the movie that Rupert Grint did about the boy who farts a lot?
No, but did you write the screenplay, Mike? Because that sounds like Defense Against the Dark Farts. That sounds like a rip-off of your idea.
Of this? Yeah, it does. So yeah, the narrator really likes Rupert Grint, the actor who portrays Ron, a character in the book the narrator is narrating. So we don't really know where in the fourth wall we are at the moment.
Or in the story. So let's read on.
Or
the narrator then says, just for some added humour, we'll be the judge of that, I just realised that I've been spelling professor as professor. So the first professor is with one F, and the second professor is with two Fs. I mean, I couldn't give an F, to be honest, but this whole time. So, yeah, I'll continue.
And this is definitely only the readers would really appreciate that joke, because if you're listening to it as an audiobook, which is kind of what this is, you don't really get the full visual of the two Fs versus the one F.
That was my bad, Mike. I should have read ahead. I'll read it again. This is how it's meant to be read in audio levels. Just for some added humour, I just realised that I've been spelling professor as professor this whole time. So, yeah, I'll continue.
And that's written in the book. So, yeah, I'll continue is written in the book.
So, just to be clear, we're on page 2. The only action that's happened so far is that the boys have checked their timetables, which we haven't even addressed.
And there is a hint of a marital breakdown. I think we didn't get that, but there is a hint of it.
There's more than a hint of the author having a breakdown. Let's be honest, Mike. The boys...
Hey, man, 2007 was a really tricky year.
It was a tough year. COVID 06 was just underway, and
Yeah. My Chemical Romance put out their Black Parade album that year. It was really big for a lot of kids.
I wonder if the professor or the professor will listen to it. Let's find out. The boys made their way to the Defense Against the Dark Arts room. That figures. They have it in their timetable. Okay, students. Ron, sorry. Okay, students. Ron said in an upset voice. Okay, it doesn't seem like he wants to be a teacher. I doubt he had been laid for a while.
Which does add further fuel to the fire that perhaps Granger and Weasley have broken up.
That's right.
And they're not, Ron is not getting any anymore, unfortunately.
These things happen. Let's learn.
And it's a shame because, you really like Rupert Grint. You don't want him to be going through a dry spell.
We love Rupert Grint. And incidentally, you're spelling Rupert Grint with one P, not two Ps, because that might add some added humour. Let's learn some new spells. I have 2 new defensive spells for you to learn today. Oh, wow. Rob smiled. Who's Rob?
So Rob is one of the boys.
Okay, great. I thought you were spelling Ron with a B for added humour. What? Rob smiled. Why did he smile? I don't know. Why not?
So that's not Tim saying that.
No,
that is the narrator saying that.
That's the narrator questioning the action that they've just written.
Which J.K. Rowling has never done. She has never done that.
Starting to see why this is only a half chapter.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to Ron, the teacher, who's not happy because he hasn't had sex with Hermione for a while. Now, I need you to...
Or anyone.
Now, I need you all to raise your wands. Hopefully not a euphemism. I am going to... Now, I need you all to raise your wands. I'm going to send a Crucio towards you, and these spells should be able to block them. If you fail to block...
Which is a horrific prospect for, that you're in class and your teacher says, I'm going to send a torture spell towards you, but don't worry because this new spell will definitely be able to block it.
This feels like the time where you've got to tell them the new spell before you torture them, because otherwise it's one of those, I've tortured you, here's what you could have done about it. I'll read on.
It's like in a science class, hey guys, I'm going to just put this Bunsen burner in your face. Don't worry, these new face shields we've got in out the back, they'll be able to block out the fire.
Well, the torturing of students goes back to a question I had about the original Harry Potter books, which is, I mean, it's lucky that Harry didn't have parents because there's no way they would have signed his permission slips. Because real school, what are we going to do? We're going to go to Sovereign Hill, Science Works, the Penguins at Phillip Island. Harry, what are you going to do? I'm going to go to a cave and destroy the living soul of the world's most notorious mass murderer. Yeah, I'll give permission for that. And here it is again. They're being tortured in class. But fortunately, Ron's going to tell them the spell. So we read on. Ron says, if you fail to blocked them... And that's written. I'm reading that how it's written.
If you fail to blocked them, yes, that is how it's written.
Fail to blocked them, you will be subjected to the spell, and you will also receive detention every day of every week of every month of every term of every semester of every year that you are Hogwarts.
that you are
every
Hogwarts.
year that you are
Hogwarts. You are at Hogwarts. Now, for you've seen the movies, and I believe that this here is a reference to a scene in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban where Fred and George do this little thing of like, Harry gets the Marauders map, he says, so this map shows, and then they go,
everyone. Where they are, what they're doing, every minute of every day. Brilliant.
I think that is a reference to that.
The reason that scene works so well as opposed to the scene we've just read is that scene features prepositions. Whereas yours doesn't, Mike.
Yes, no.
Okay, so
you've got to... Yeah.
So Ron's about to torture the kids, and if they don't block the torture, they're going to be in detention for eternity.
And they will just be subjected to the torture. And it is really... Hogwarts has taken a tough love kind of approach, you know? Hey, you signed up for this.
Hey, exactly.
You're at magic school. Expect to be tortured and everlasting detention.
Exactly. I mean, we thought Naplan was tough, but this is serious. I mean, this is serious teaching, but I like it. The students looked around and were really scared and stuff. Again, terrific descriptions. Because they didn't...
Scared and stuff.
Because they didn't want to get the detentions. Not that they didn't want to get tortured physically. They just don't want to get detentions.
Not scared of excruciating pain, just detentions.
Just detentions. Which makes sense, I guess, since I have my own experiences of detentions and they seriously suck heaps. That's the author of the book telling a bit of a personal story.
Got a few detentions at the old high school that we went to, and they sucked heaps.
Was it for creative writing by any chance, Mike?
I read this book to the class and they're like, you need to stay in on a Friday afternoon. You cannot go home.
So every Friday of every afternoon of every month you are school. Yeah. So
and we're gonna torture you.
Okay, back to the book. Come on, teachers, just let me go. I didn't really do anything wrong besides talk while you were, and in the long term, it doesn't really affect you, does it? You still get paid. You still make money.
This is just me. This is me just like, you know, unleashing on the whole concept of detention.
This is a major tangent. This is a personal rant against education. Which really you should have been wanting to be at that school for every second you could, Mike. You still get paid. You still make money. You're doing okay. You're is spelt incorrectly. Don't worry about it. Just don't keep me in. We would both prefer it if you just let me go and you admit that yourself most of the we would this is my bad reading. It's not the fact that there are 75 commas and then there are pages without commas. It's my bad reading, Mike. We would both prefer it if you just let me go and you admit that yourself most of the time, so why not? Anyway, good rant.
Now we now know why this is a half chapter. That is why, because this chapter is half the story and then half an upset 13-year-old just venting in book form. I've turned this chapter into a diary entry essentially.
This is very avant-garde writing, Mike, because we've got multiple perspectives happening at the same time. Anyway, it seems like we're going back to Ron now.
So we're back in the story.
Back in the story. Ron says, once I throw the spell towards you, you must speak the incantation Evadius.
I think that's a pretty good spell name.
Like
Evadius. Evade.
Evade. The Evadius spells will cause any powerful dark curse to disappear, except for the killing curse. Reassuring from the teacher. But
amazing they never taught this one to Harry and the gang.
I know.
You think they need it?
I mean, Harry in the final battle could have used this, and Voldemort would have had no chance because he would have evaded the spells. Just while we're taking tangents, Mike. My wish was, having seen all the movies, I wish in the final battle, so it's Harry and Voldemort. Voldemort's throwing the Avada Kedavra killing curse. I wish Harry had used, instead of the same spell, I wish he'd used, is it Ferroverto to turn Voldemort into a water goblet? I wish that had been the ultimate callback, because that seems like a great spell. Voldemort can't do anything as a teacup. But we never use it.
We actually talked about this last week or a few weeks ago. Just like, that is a great curse. Like, anyone's threatening you, just turn them into a goblet and then throw them into the ocean.
It's the ultimate power move. Turn Voldemort into a cup and then drink from him. I mean, that's the ultimate boss move. Anyway, what would I know? Okay, so Ron's giving them the Evadius curse. This spell can take years to master, so I'm assuming that you'll be all having detention with me. Ron smiled.
So teaching these first-year students a spell that he knows is well beyond their reach, but just doing it anyway.
If you would like a simpler but shittier alternative to the clearly superior Evadius, full stop, you could try a really shit defense spell, which is called Elixiude. It's pretty shit.
Another Mike original.
Mike, you've invented a lot of spells.
It's pretty shit.
It's pretty shit, Ron says. And basically all it does is transfigures the spell that has been used against you into an Expelliarmus spell. Quick use of Elixiude can save you from torture to just being disarmed. We shall now begin.
Now that actually seems like a good spell. You can transform a spell into a different spell.
Well, not according to the teacher. The teacher called it pretty shit. I'd love to imagine if you're in class and the teacher goes, all right, we're going to learn the 7 times tables. I know we learnt the 6 times tables. I mean, these are pretty shit, but trust me, when we get to the 8 times tables, you're going to love them. Ron lined up the students from shortest to tallest because Neville prefers short kids in detention because it makes him feel taller, and he would be taking half of our detentions if they are received. Good logic.
Which does mean that Ron has had a conversation with Neville about, hey, can you help me out with detentions because I'm teaching the Elixiude spell today. There's probably going to be a lot of detentions.
I wouldn't call it teaching. He's promised to kill them, and if they don't survive, they get punished forever. So, good class. I wouldn't be choosing this as an elective. Get back to the farts.
Yeah.
The students lined up and began testing the spells. Ron was astonished by the amount of students who were doing it right. That is astonishing, given he practically gave them no instruction and threatened to kill them. But I suppose good motivation. Only 3 students got the permanent detentions, and these students were all very shattered and upset. Obviously hadn't been laid for a while. But don't...
Tim, they're first years, mate. That's to be too far.
Sorry. That's taking it too far. Okay, now that we know where the line is... But don't worry, because all of the boys succeeded, and the characters that got the detentions are not main characters and play no part in the story and are simply here for comic relief. There we go.
Really great tactic to use there. You know, have characters that are not main characters and explicitly tell your readers that, hey, don't worry about these characters. They're never going to come up again in the story.
I can't trust the narrator though, Mike, because with the amount of tangents you go on, these characters might end up being the most central, most important characters. Ron stopped the class and congratulated the students on their achievements, i.e. not dying. He then told the class that it was time for the theory part of the lesson. Good thing. Start with the practical that there's no way that they can possibly understand, then hit him with the theory.
The theory behind it, yeah.
Many students became angry at this and left the room. Okay. They'd rather take a chance on dying than open their exercise books to page 14.
But it is true. Like if you were doing, say, PE at school, and it's like, all right, guys, we're gonna play footy outside. And now we're going to come inside and learn the science behind cardiovascular exercise. You'd walk out of that class.
Exactly.
Just want to play footy.
So here's my question. Where does this chapter fit into the overall story of this book? Because the chapters I've heard, it's just a list of things happening in their day. What's the big plot of this book?
So far, we're not really sure. There have been a few things going on with like one of the teachers, Mr. Charger, who's one of the mean teachers at the school. He seems to be able to shoot spells out of his bum hole, which we believe is him using the dark fart. So there's a bit of mystery there. So that's sort of the plot.
Incidentally, a bit of trivia, that's how Maggie Smith fired her spells as McGonagall in the movies. So, out of her arsehole. So, okay, so that's where this fits into the bigger, just providing a bit of context for the listeners and the readers. Ron continues, today's theory section will be based on the elemental spells, which are almost impossible to use by all wizards.
There you go.
And I'm sure that if you don't use them, you're going to be punished or killed. These spells are ancient and were used only by the greatest wizards. As for me, I am only able to use one of the spells. Oh, interesting. Bit of intrigue.
Ron was never great academically in his time at Hogwarts. We do know that, but it seems like he has come a long way since then and can now use one of these ancient spells.
I can't wait to find out what these ancient spells are. Many students became focused at the rather interesting topic. Good. I thought they'd all left, but they obviously rushed back into the classroom. Ron took out his wand, again, hopefully not a euphemism. At the moment, there are 3 known is in italics, elemental spells. Although ancient sources seem to imply there are even more. The 3 known elemental spells are...
Can we just pause?
What are they going to be?
Can we pause very quickly? Because this actually seems like a big plot revelation. Like we're starting to learn about some lore of the world that wasn't in the original series, yet this is a half chapter. So if that doesn't excite you for what's to come, I don't know what will.
Mike, it's a major plot revelation. What's it doing in the book? Where's the speculation on characters that are no longer important? And your own personal rants. Okay, what are the 3 known elemental spells? Ron stopped talking because he noticed Gemini. He's one of he's a boy. A boy. Okay. Ron stopped talking because he noticed Gemini and Derek. Refreshing to hear a character in Hogwarts called Derek sniggering in the back. Ron was infuriated. He didn't like to be interrupted. Never interrupt someone who threatens to kill you, as a general rule. He began writing on the blackboard behind him.
So that's interesting because you don't see many blackboards at Hogwarts either. Chalk as well.
No, I mean, you'd think they'd have a smart board, but no, blackboard.
No, because
if it was a smart board.
No, we all know teachers just can't use smart boards. They just can't figure out how to use them.
Teachers can't. What was smart about them? Yeah. The fact that they couldn't be opened by people who are university educated.
Can you imagine Professor Snape trying to use a smart board and all the kids just being like, "No, sir, you've got to close that window and do this." And Snape's like, "Oh, I just don't know how to use these bloody things." Because that's how it went every time at school.
If you don't know what we're talking about, if you were at high school or primary school in the sort of mid 2000s, blackboards were replaced by whiteboards, which were then replaced by whiteboards with a faulty projector of a computer onto it, which would never line up. It would always be on a 5-degree angle and zoomed out to 1,000%. And then teachers would try and click on it using the whiteboard marker, realizing that wasn't working. And then you'd use permanent marker on the smartboard and leave a massive dick stain on the smartboard.
Always that one teacher who accidentally wrote on the smartboard with a whiteboard marker and then just like can't rub it out because it's not an actual whiteboard.
The only thing smart was the company selling these ineffective boards to thousands of schools across the country. That was the real genius.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ron writes on the blackboard behind him, those talking will be expelled from Hogwarts in brackets XVI minutes. 16 minutes.
Well, that's just a bizarre bit of prose right there. That is just a strange sentence.
So he started writing the punishment in English, switched to Roman numerals, and then back into English. So, hang on. Okay. So, if you found talking in class, you're punished for 16 minutes.
Yeah.
if you fail to protect yourself from the killing curse, you're punished for eternity.
Well,
It's a bit of a strange system.
two kinds of eternity, because you assume you die, but you also get detention for the rest of your time at the school. So
Yeah, not only are you dead, but you have the embarrassment of being dead in detention forever.
you've got to come back as a ghost. That's what happened to Moaning Myrtle. She got never-ending detention.
That's right. She talked in class. This actually does fit into the true Harry Potter universe, though, because I've always had a bone to pick with the scoring system of the House Cup.
Yeah.
So the House Cup was this thing that all the students were playing for. And yet in the same scoring system, Neville got like 60 points for having the courage to stand up to your friends. Harry and Ron, for defeating a killer troll that almost wiped out the entire school, got 5 points. What kind of Qantas Club frequent flyer rewards point is that?
Do you remember?
You get 5 points for...
Sorry, no, continue.
You get 5 points for saving the school from almost certain destruction, and for having a slight metaphorical victory, you get 60 points.
And then, do you reckon there was, because we had house points at our school, there was always that one teacher who, like, because most of the time teachers give them out in multiples of 5 or 10. There was always that one teacher who's like, all right, you can have 2 house points for that. And it's like, two house points. God.
Two house points. I just fixed the smart board. What are you talking about? I deserve more than that. I would have loved there to be an epilogue chapter to the Harry Potter series after Harry had defeated Voldemort, and for defeating the most notorious serial killer this world has ever known. 7 points. What are these 7 points?
Which does mean Gryffindor is still 2 points shy of the win, unfortunately. But well done, Harry. You did do a lot.
But to Neville, who killed the killer snake, 1 billion points. So, back to the book. Ron has written on the board, those talking will be expelled from Hogwarts for 16 minutes. Everyone read the message. There was no more talking. He wrote underneath the message, these are the elemental spells.
Wow.
The elemental spell of fire, Moltano.
Ooh, interesting.
I've noticed something. The elemental spell of ice, Articane. I've noticed something again. Yeah. The elemental spell of thunder, Zapotron. Now,
Zapotron is a very technological kind of spell.
If I'm not mistaken, Mike, I'm not a Ravenclaw nerd, but if I'm not mistaken, are they not Pokemon from Pokemon Emerald?
If you're, well, very, like, you're on track, but you're quite incorrect. So,
it's fire red and leaf green, isn't it?
Clearly here you see more of Mike's Year 7 influences coming out in his writing, because those are not the names of Pokemon, but there are 3 Pokemon in the original Pokemon series: Zapdos, Moltres, and Articuno. And I've created 3 spells: Moltano, Articane, and Zapotron. Now, I find this interesting.
Hang on, let me just check copyright law. Yep, all clear.
I'll just check my Pokédex. Yep, it's all good. But can I just give you a quick little tidbit fact about those names that I quite like?
Please take a tangent, Mike. I mean, the narrator would never take one in the book, but please you take a tangent.
We are very close to being done here, but like those 3 Pokemon, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, it's actually the Uno, Zapdos, and Moltres is the Spanish 1, 2, and 3. I always thought that was very interesting, but yes, please continue.
There you go. We'll define very interesting.
Soon we'll have a spell that's just like Pikachu's on or something like that.
Charamandazor. Yeah. Right. So these are the 3 elemental spells.
Yes.
Moltano is the spell of fire. Articane is the spell of ice. Zapotron, the spell of thunder. Ron continued speaking. The first 2 spells have been used once before under ... in italics, special circumstances. What are the special circumstances?
I'm assuming we will never find out.
They sound interesting. We're never going to know about them.
Put that in the box of did Ron and Hermione get a divorce? What were the special circumstances?
These are interesting questions. They were used once before by 2 famous wizards, Godric Gryffindor and Salazar Slytherin.
Wow.
Of course. Wow. Let's learn more. I mean, we probably won't, but let's try. Ron says, I'm also able to cast the Moltano spell, as I have red hair, lol.
So, Ron has red hair. Red is the color of fire, which is obviously why Ron can cast the fire elemental spell.
obviously. I mean, the logic is flawless.
It's pretty obvious.
I mean, finally, that's pretty obvious. But Ranger, what about the third spell, Lockie asked?
So, and just another pause here.
Question.
You know, we're going back to 2007. Summer Heights High, huge show at this point, which is probably where Ranger has come into to this book.
There we go. I'm glad Salazar from Tonga is not a character in this book because we wouldn't be able to do it these days, Mike.
Smouse, the wizarding Smouse.
The Smouse Cup. 2 points for the Smouse Cup. Ron continues, the Zapotron spell was also used once by another wizard. well, that was hardly a surprising reveal. Another what? Wizard. Jesus. Ron continues, I'm not sure how or why it happened, but it happened, Ron replied. Well, who used it? Hopeless McDopeless asked.
It's good.
That's a bit mean to call a character Hopeless McDopeless.
It's good to see Hopeless McDopeless make a return because I did think he did appear in the Sorting chapter and I did think he would definitely be a one-off character, but like it's good to know he's still hanging around at Hogwarts.
I feel even the narrator said at one point this character will not come back. So, I mean, amazing that characters who were explicitly said not to come back return. So, who used it? Hopeless McDopeless asked. Ron seemed unsure if he wanted to say or not. But before he could, the door at the back of the room opened. Here we go. This is a bit of action.
Finally.
Everybody turned their heads around to check who it was. Mr. Charger had entered the room. A idiotic grin on his face. The irony of describing someone's grin as idiotic using the incorrect preposition beforehand, Mike.
A idiotic grin. Also, I'm reading along with you. Idiotic is also spelt incorrectly, as it usually is.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'll read that how it was intended by the author. Mr. Charger had entered the room. A idiotic grin on his face. He wore a sticker on his robe saying, Potions Teacher, smile emoticon. He strutted wankerishly.
That is a new adverb. We have not had wankerishly.
We've not had an adverb for a while, but there it is. He strutted wankerishly to the front of the room. He slapped Ron in the face. Lightly, okay. And slowly rotated his head round like Snape did when Harry said he's got Padfoot in the place where it's hidden in the 5th movie.
Okay,
hold the phone.
Very specific reference.
Almost a reference to something that had not been written or seen yet in the time of this universe. So you need to have seen the movie.
Yes.
To know. You need to have seen a different movie to know what's happening in this movie. Oh, so a bit of action. So so who's Mr. Charger? He's the Defense Against the Dark Farts teacher, isn't he?
Correct. No, he's the potions teacher, but we believe he is using Defense Against the Dark Arts because he shot a spell. He shot a magical light out of his bum. So we don't know what that is yet.
I think we've all been there. What? Okay, so this is a big confrontation between the two lead professors. They're going head on. I used it, Mr. Charger yelled.
Wow.
He walked out.
So
okay.
he's walked in, he's lightly slapped Ron across the face. He says, I used it, and then he walks back out. It's like he was waiting outside the classroom the whole time.
And yet an amazing revelation that we will now never know anything about. What did he use?
He used Zapotron.
There are more questions.
He used Zapotron, I think. That's what he used. He used Zapotron. Yeah.
So it was a thunderbolt he shot out of his ass. Maybe. That was weird and dramatic, Sam spoke. Shut up, Sam, you tool. Rob insulted Sam and the class laughed. You don't know how he used it. We can have a guess. Out of his bum. You don't know when or why. You don't know what happened. No, Ron said. Oh, sorry, that was Rob before.
Rob is
sorry,
different.
It was Rob. Sorry. Listeners who have been following along with this podcast, who are actually listening to this podcast to hear the text of this book, not our little joke asides, they're going to be majorly confused.
Yeah.
It was Rob who insulted Sam.
Yes.
And then Ron said no. Well, you aren't a good teacher, Michael smirked.
Ooh.
Now, this is interesting. It appears to be Russian. The next line appears to be written in Russian.
That's interesting. So
Can you speak Russian?
No, I can't.
What?
So, like, there is a Russian sentence in Russian characters that we don't know what it is, right?
I mean, bold move from the author who was clearly struggling with English sentences written in English to be writing suddenly in another language. But, do you know what I'll do? I'm on my computer. I'm going to Google translate this sentence. Ah, interesting. What do you think it says, Mike? You're the writer of the book. What do you think it says?
I have no idea what it says. What does it say?
It says, what do spells do?
Okay, so it was a legitimate sentence that fits in the context.
Sentence. Ironically, the one sentence written in Russian is actually the only sentence with perfect grammar and syntax. That's amazing.
But also, why is Lockie speaking in Russian? That is another question.
Add it to the list of interesting questions that will not be answered in this chapter. What do spells do? Lockie said a sentence all of a sudden in Russian for some random unknown reason. Sorry, I don't know how that happened. What I meant to say was, what do the spells do? Okay.
So we could have just read on and we would have figured it out.
So I think Ron, the teacher, continues, Moltano will permanently burn a person where it is hit. It will cause them constant pain forever. Big spell.
Good spell.
Good spell. Articane will cause a person to lose all thermostatic recognition. What does that mean? That's what they lose the ability to go, gee, it feels hot today, or it's a bit chilly. Is that the spell?
Should I wear a jumper? What's the weather outside? I'm not sure. I was hit with Articane. I've got Articane. I don't know.
I have no thermostatic recognition. By the way, just to give the context, these are the three most powerful spells in the Radio Mike Harry Potter and the Boys Wizarding universe. The first one gives you constant pain forever. The second, you lose all thermostatic recognition and causing them to be cold even on the warmest days. Okay.
I mean, that's pretty bad.
That is pretty bad. Although, ironically, if you're hit with both Articane and Moltano, the two spells sort of cancel each other out. You feel cold forever and then you get a slight burn. Zapotron, the third spell, will cause any electronic device, which is amazing because I didn't know electronic devices were in the Hogwarts Harry Potter universe.
And this is an ancient spell, so it's an ancient spell where, assumingly pre any electricity was discovered.
Zapotron will cause any electronic device to come into power. Where was this in the age of smartboards? Will start mass storms all around the world and can alter people's brainwaves. 3 hits of Zapotron, and you dead. Ron answered. Wow. These are some pretty big...
3? Why specifically 3 hits? Like you can kill... If you want to kill someone, you Avada Kedavra them. If they don't have the Evadius charm, they've got no hope.
That's exactly right. Provided they still have their thermostatic recognition, Mike, then they're in no hope. Okay, these are the 3 elemental spells. 3 hits and you dead? Someone asked. Ron replied, you dead. Students asked, we dead? Ron replied, yes, you dead. A student says, I dead in 3 hits? Ron replies, 3 hits, you dead. And so is the chapter.
The end of the chapter.
So is that half of the chapter. What an amazing chapter, Mike. What a roller coaster of emotions.
I loved that chapter.
I loved it too. So many major plot developments, many of them not actually included in the text of the chapter, but we end the story on a major bombshell. They've gone to Defense Against the Dark Arts. They've learnt about 3 powerful spells, one of which could kill you. And I think Ron's about to teach it to the students, but we don't know because the chapter's done. I want to read the next one.
The chapter's done. You've got to wait till next week's episode. Hey, do you have 5 more minutes? Because we've got a few. Usually I read out emails. I've decided to change this segment to the owl post. So we've had a few owls come in. And I'd love to read some out.
In the course of reading that chapter? That doesn't surprise me. I've got a few owls of my own. But happy to answer some viewer listener owls.
Well, we got one from Devon. Devon's owl sent off a little note. It says, hey, really enjoying
Devon the person or Devon the place? Where did we get it from?
Devon the person has
okay.
written in from a place that we don't know. He says, really enjoying the podcast. And then he specifically says, other than Keelan's episode.
Whoa.
So Keelan was on an episode. He didn't like that one. As a massive Harry Potter fan, I must say that you enrage me slightly at least once or twice an episode with your inaccuracies, which is not good. And I just like Harry Potter, I don't get it right every time. Right? I just don't.
Do you get it right any time, Mike? I'll be honest.
Well, I'd like to think
You're
so.
the author of this book, and even you don't know the answers to these questions.
Devon then says, I struggle onwards to learn more about the mysterious dark farts. Just writing in to agree with you, Hufflepuff does indeed suck. And he goes on for a bit more, but I'll move forward. Also got an email from Genevieve Chalmers.
Sorry, Mike.
Oh, yeah?
Just a quick note to Devon. And with writing like that, you could write the sequel to this book, because that was a confusing email that went absolutely nowhere. Who's our next? Who's our next owl from?
An owl came in from Genevieve Chalmers. The entire content of the email was just TikTok you might like. She then linked me to a TikTok, and she said, it's a TikTok where Professor Umbridge from the movie says, you're going to be doing some lines for me today, Mr. Potter. And then I'm sure you can guess where the TikTok goes after that. But
absolutely.
Yes.
Drug use, essentially, Mike.
Yeah.
Which
not a Bart Simpson chalkboard gag kind of thing. It's a different kind of lines.
Don't put chalk on the smartboard, whatever you're doing. Don't do that.
Got another owl from Nick Condon. Last chapter, we were introduced to two students who were twins called John and Squid Mooney. And there was also a spell introduced in that chapter.
Hang on. Two twins called John and...
Squid, which is short for Squidvius.
Imagine the parents.
Now,
all right, got two kids. We got to name them. What do we name the first one? John. What do we name the second one? Think of an object. Squid.
Squid. Yeah. Squid. Now, in the same chapter, we also learnt a new spell. The spell is just John, and it turns any object into a living human being called John. Now, Nick Condon's actually created his own fan theory. He said, theory... John and Squid Mooney were both squids, but someone used the John spell on John the Squid, and now he is a human John. So there's that.
That actually makes a lot more sense than parents naming two kids, one kid John, the other kid Squid. That they were both called Squid, and Squid number one said, "There's a spell that can give me a slightly better name, and I can walk on land." So I'll become a John. Wow. See, Mike, these are interesting characters, but they were nowhere in.
Nowhere in this chapter.
That's how bold this book is. You're introducing amazing characters and then ditching them in the next chapter.
Two final owls came in. You obviously haven't heard the last episode, but you may have heard in the Sam episode, we do have a young lady named Aimeé, who is the official correspondent of the show. She emails in every episode.
Hello, Aimeé. I'll wait an episode for your reply, but that's okay.
There was one episode where she didn't write in.
Whoa.
But
what episode was that?
That was 2 episodes ago. So then the next episode, we actually got an owl, sorry, not email, an owl from a different Aimeé who said she wanted to possibly replace the original Aimeé as the official correspondent of the show. And I made her, with Zach Miller, another mate of ours that you know, Zach decided that the new Aimeé should be the foreign correspondent of the show. Even though she's from Australia, she is the foreign correspondent. So, we did get an owl from the original Aimeé. She says, hello, Mike, my good friend and birthday twin. We did find out Aimeé and I have the same birthday. Welcome to my 13th email. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the other Aimeé, the foreign correspondent, but also would like to defend myself in light of claims of my dropping the ball. I may have missed 1 week's email due to work commitments and not wanting to pollute the podcast with random Harry Potter musings, but I have averaged 1 email per podcast since the start of the show. I sent an email at the start of the year which wasn't read out on the show, so I was under the impression that my emails weren't that paramount to the show's running. Don't worry, listeners, the ball, or the quaffle, will not be dropped again. There is no need for a replacement Aimeé, even if it is Aimeé Shark. I don't know what other Harry Potter fanfiction Other Aimeé mentioned she knows another Harry Potter fanfiction podcast that she prefers to this one. Original Aimeé says, I don't know what other Harry Potter fanfiction other Aimeé is talking about, but the only one I listen to is Harry Potter and the Boys. I guess I'm just a true loyalist to the show. And then last week I said that Hogwarts has a tool.
Sorry, Mike, you just dropped out at the start of that email. Could you read it again? So this is amazing. You've got two Aimees. One of them who, what did she say? She said she didn't want to pollute the podcast with random Harry Potter musics. Well, we've been doing that for the last hour, Mike. So where's that? I think we need to be sending the apology.
She then clears up because last week I said there was a tuition fee at Hogwarts. It turns out there is not a tuition fee. The Ministry of Magic subsidizes magical education.
Oh, that goes to my other question. As you're a fan of the series, Mike, explain to me this.
Yeah.
How the most powerful person in the magical universe seems to be the headmaster of the local school, and he's challenging the Minister of Magic for control of the wizarding world. The equivalent of that would be if, like, ScoMo ran in the election against the principal of DLR. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. What is going on?
Yeah.
Maybe one of the two Aimees writing in could answer that question next week.
Yeah, if one of the Aimees could answer that, that'd be good. Finally, Al from New Aimeé, foreign correspondent. Hey, Mike. Glad to hear original Aimeé is still with the podcast. It has always been my dream to be a Melbourne-based foreign correspondent on a Melbourne podcast, so thank you. I can assure you I'll take this role very seriously. Already added it to my resume. And then she says, I'm sure original Aimeé is all over it, but with regards to tuition, the Ministry of Magic does cover all fees at Hogwarts.
Glad we got to the bottom of the subsidy mystery that was keeping all fans up at night. I mean, who killed Voldemort? Who pays for the tuition? I mean, they're both major questions.
Finally, she does plug the other Harry Potter fan fiction that she listens to. I'm refusing to mention that podcast on the show.
We don't negotiate with terrorists, Mike. We don't promote any other fan fiction. I mean, if you are going to read Harry Potter fan fiction, Harry Potter and the Order of the Chief Health Officer is coming out soon. So I will get an Aimeé to read that. Just before we go, Mike, you have two Aimees who are at the centre of this podcast. Who's your favourite?
I don't have a favourite Aimeé. I like both of the Aimees as much as the other, I really hope they continue to contribute to the show. Love you both, Aimees.
Is it possible that Aimeé number 2 was actually a squid and used the Aimeé spell to become Aimeé? Is that possible? Well, I guess we'll find out next week. It is possible.
So looking forward to hearing from the Aimees via the Owl post next week. Tim, thank you. This has been a bloody journey doing this over Zoom with our tech set up, but can I please request that you plug all the great things you do here? Please do that now.
Okay, so Harry Potter and the Order of the Chief Health Officer, that's coming out soon. Occasionally, you may notice me up the back on Have You Been Paying Attention, 8:30 Monday nights, coming back in 2021. Tim and Sammy, at Tim and Sammy on all your socials, do a podcast there. If you like motorsport, at The Reserve Drivers, I do an F1 podcast. But Mike, can I thank you? What a pleasure it is. I mean, statistically, with the amount of podcasts you release, I was bound to appear on one of them at some point, but it has been such a pleasure reading this book. I can't wait to hear how it unfolds. Unfortunately, I do have to rush off. It's got very cold in here all of a sudden, and I've lost all thermostatic recognition. So I do have to go. But it has been a pleasure, Mike, and I can't wait for the next chapter.
Definitely check out the Tim and Sammy podcast with obviously Sammy Garlep, who, as we said, was on an earlier ep of this podcast, and would be great to get you guys on Mike Talks as well. Get you on everything we can. But yeah, Tim and Sammy pod I've been listening to every episode. Super funny, just really great podcast. And is it once weekly that it's coming out?
Yeah, once a week. Some podcasters choose quality over quantity, but that's okay. That's okay, Mike. Do you want to plug all 4 of your podcasts now?
No. I'm all good. Tim McDonald, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Radio Mike, thank you. And as we say it's now Radio Mike, thank you. And Evadius.
and as we say in Russian.
As we say in Russian, what do spell do? Thanks, Mike.
But I went to run my hand through your hair and I noticed You were attached to string. You were a puppet this whole time. You were attached to string.